welcome to Elvenhome and to this week's edition, which concentrates mainly on the continuing work to build the walls for the engine shed, but also gives you a closer look at an addition to the layout which is trundling around behind me. It's been a rather busy time the last couple of weeks for a reason that I'll explain in the next section. So not so much has been done on the layout this week, but one or two interesting things have occurred. But first of all, let's go and have a look at the work to build the walls of the engine shed. Time to give you an update on the work to build the engine shed. And as you'll see, I've now completed the components for one of the two walls. I'm going to build all the bits for both walls because I want to make sure before I stick anything together that I've got two walls that are indeed exactly the same as each other, because nobody wants a wonky engine shed. And you'll see that the first frame has already been built for the 7 frames that will make up the other sides. I eventually decided that I would actually have 7 windows each side. And what you can see here are the constituent bits, and I'll show you what they look like in a minute, up against one of the roof frames, and into the parts here and here will be inserted what will be the end wall and the open entranceway to the shed. It's quite a therapeutic thing building these frames, and I'll show you at the end of this how I go about building them. But to show you now the way that this all goes together, at the moment, the only thing I've determined is that there's going to be this brick on the outside. I haven't yet settled in my mind what I'm going to have internally. I think it's going to be brick. It may be that I will use the 2mm plasticard, or whatever it is, Slater's card for the internal bricks, on the basis that that wall would not be load bearing. All the load is on the external walls and the H-column. But to show you how this goes together, it is, as I suggested, that you've got this 3 pieces there. If I take them off, that's the frame. Each one of these pieces of Slater's card has been cut specifically to go with a specific frame, because although the jig is giving me quite a degree of accuracy, there are slight differences, and it's important that that everything fits snugly. So at the moment, all that is just a very simple piece of card cut out with exactly the right space in which to put the window, and that comes down obviously down to the bottom. On the inside, you'll see that the card rises. If I get to make sure this is in focus, let's put this here better. Rises, it's about 5mm above the top, because the frame is going to come and sit down on top of these here to provide the anchor point for on the exterior wall, and then I will have something else obviously providing support for the inner part of the wall. Each one of these, as you'll see if you see that one, has the top cut away so that that too sits here, and that will allow then the frame to go along. And that's why I'm waiting until I've got all the frames together to make sure that I can do any fettling that needs doing here, to make sure that's a nice level surface for that frame to sit down on in the wall. And of course also these have all got to be painted, and it would be a much easier job to paint them all in one go than to do it bit by bit. So that's where I've got to with the building so far. Each one of these frames does take some concentration to do, so it's not the kind of thing you can bang out very, very quickly. In the comments on the last video, Chris from Bognor Regis, Chris's N-Gauge channel, asked me if I could try and show how I use the jig, just to help him understand how that works. Now, I had a go at trying to do that and actually film me using it, but I just don't have the right equipment to be able to position a camera right over the top with good lighting, and you not to get either the crown of my head or my hands in the way. So the only way that I could think of doing it was to do it by taking individual still photographs and then putting them together with a narration over it. And that's what you're going to see now after this section. The next stage for me is to try and complete the other wall, which I'm hoping I'll be able to do over the next fortnight. Life is a bit demanding at the moment because, as some of you will know, I'm involved with the Scottish Railway Preservation Society and trying to get the Bowness and Kinneil Railway running again, and that's taking up a lot of time. But I hope to be able to get the other wall completed and then think about the paint scheme and how all that's going to look. I've also got to decide in my mind finally what I'm going to put below the window. Now, as you'll see here, there we go, I've deliberately cut this out because that's just much easier for fitting. I've got plenty of pieces of wall that could go in there to make it a complete wall surround, or I could fit another piece of strip styrene that maybe sits the same depth as the support there, the bottom of the window frame there, and paint that a different colour so it looks like a kind of sill, or that the window is sitting on a sill. But I'll make my mind up once I get to that point, I think. For the present, the more important thing is to make another 6 frames and then cut all the various pieces out and get that completed. So that's where I've got to so far on doing this bit of work. And now I will show you how it is that I go about creating one of these frames. Here is the jig with the basic pieces that create the frame. The first 2 pieces that are inserted are 2 4mm by 1mm stripped styrene to form the top and bottom. 2 uprights 2mm by 1mm are inserted using the central piece to line them correctly. Another piece 2mm by 1mm is added to start to form the right height for the bottom of the window frame, to which one piece of 1mm square is added to bring the bottom of the window frame to the right height. Finally, 2 more uprights 1mm square are added to provide the sides of the window frame, after which the frame is removed and you can see here the basic frame. The cross member at the top of the window is then inserted using 2mm by 1mm using the smaller jig, and a piece 1mm square is fitted on top to complete the window frame recess, and you can see it here removed from the jig with the window inserted. The frame is then put onto the smaller jig with the other side facing to allow me to do the raised frame on the exterior side of the window area using 1mm square styrene. This is generally cut bespoke to deal with slight variances, and here you can see the final frame. I thought I'd take the opportunity to update you with where we are and what's going on the layout. Not very much as it happens at the moment, for the reasons that I've already really explained. That's taking my time. But there have been a new arrival or 2 on the layout in the last week, and one of them is making its way round the layout, which is a Princess Coronation class locomotive, Duchess of Norfolk, in BR Experimental Blue, because I didn't have a blue locomotive and I thought we really should have one. And it's broadly right for the main period for which the layout is intended. And you'll see it making its way around the layout now. Pulling the stannier in LMS livery, which may or may not have happened, but that's the right type of coach behind the locomotive. It certainly would have pulled them at some stage. You may notice that the layout is looking very sparse indeed, because all the other locomotives and rolling stock have been removed. We had some builders in, painters, who were doing work on the window frames, and the sanding was lots of fine dust, so they were very nervous about coming in this room. So I've removed all the locomotives and actually got to put them into a storage box which I just ordered from 10 Commandments. I've got 2 other storage boxes, and I'll put some photos up now of the box into which they go, which I think are lock and lock boxes. No, they're not. I can't remember what they're called. And then they have the foam and the foam inserts, and I've got 2 or 3 of these. I've got two of the size you're seeing and one that's a bit thinner. And I find them really useful. I'm sure if you could buy them separately and cut them up yourself, but these really work very well for me, and I'm very pleased with them. I hasten to add, I buy them all myself. Again, this is not a paid placement or anything, but I just like to pass on those things that I use that I find helpful. And I'll put a link in the description below to the 10 Commandments page where you can see these. And they are a local company to me, just over in Fife. So anything to do to help a local trader. I'll give you a closer look at the Duchess going round in a short thing, and then we can come back and we'll bring this week's video to an end. Well, I hope you enjoyed those clips of the train running. It is a beautiful locomotive. I'm really very, very pleased with it. This is the first locomotive in which I've started playing around with the CV values. The Gauge Master controller that I have, the Prodigy Advance, allows you easily to set the starting voltage, the acceleration and deceleration without actually needing to know which CV number it is that you're jiggering around with. And so on this one, I have started to play around both with acceleration and deceleration. If I just show you as it comes around the corner here, I'll take the power off, and you'll see that it won't stop dead. It will slow. I think it needs a bit more adjustment, but the power is now at 0. And you'll see the train just slowly crawls. There's more work to be done there, I think. The only thing, of course, is you have to do it on the programming track and then test it, but I'm quite pleased with that. And then the acceleration, that's now up to 38, and you'll see the train accelerating away slowly. So playing with CV values may well be something that I come to do a bit more of with some of the other locomotives, because I've been quite pleased by the way of dealing with that. This has got a basic MX617N decoder in it, which doesn't have the braking function. But I've been really quite pleased with beginning to dip my toe into programming the locomotive decoder other than at its default settings. So I think that, I'm sorry, there's somebody at the door. I'll be back in just a moment. Your eyes do not deceive you. The diesel has made entry to Elvenhome. There's a bit of a backstory to why I've suddenly succumbed to buying this Pullman train. In fact, it's a 57-year-old backstory. My first train set was a train set by Triang called the Highwayman, I think, and I'll put a picture up here, taken from a fascinating website, which I'll put a link to the website in the description below, which tracks a lot of the Hornby products. And in Christmas 1964, I got that train set. And along with that train set was the catalogue from Trying Hornby. And on the front page there was an image that has stayed with me, I think, ever since, of the Midland Pullman. And I used to look at the catalogues as they came out and think, one day I will own a Midland Pullman. And of course I went away from modelling and came back to modelling and settled on the steam era, and was most determined that it was going to be the steam era. And I suddenly realised that I was boxing myself into a corner, and that given my layout has on it locomotives from the Great Western Railway, the London North Eastern Railway, London Midland and Scottish, both in LMS, LNER, Great Western livery and the early BR livery. But also I have two locomotives of the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway in their livery, which they certainly wouldn't have had until after, certainly much after 1924-25. It's no good saying that my layout is prototypical, and keeping myself out of owning something I've wanted for 57 years was a bit daft. I have to say, those dreadful people, Mark at Piddle in the Marsh and Paul at Wickford, have been showing these locomotives running on their layout. And I finally gave in after last weekend's videos that Paul put up at Wickford Railway. And if you haven't seen his channel, again, I'll put a link below. I've mentioned it before. The cinematography is just beautiful. And it's usually 7 or 8 minutes of just pure joy sitting and watching the trains go by. But I finally succumbed. And so I bought the Midland Pullman Special Collector's Edition from TMC. Actually, they had it at a very good price. And it arrived on Wednesday, just as the painters arrived, so it had to be packed up. But has been spreading its legs for the last couple of days. I have to say, it was the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done in my life, putting the chips in. Because getting the body shells off of the two power cars, you have to put a chip in each one. When there's such fine detail, and you don't want to mark or scar anything on it, is a nightmare. If I do buy any more diesel locomotives, I really do hope it's not quite so bloody scary taking the body shells off. But absolutely brilliant. Put them on, lights came on, and away she goes, and she runs beautifully and does not look out of place on Elvenhome. The earth has not shaken, the people have not run away screaming, and she now takes her place in this fantasy place of Elvenhome, where time is really all a bit mixed up. With that, I think that brings this edition of Elvenhome to a close, and I'm hoping over the next fortnight to be able to do the thing which I didn't have time to do and show you, which is to build another of those bungalow kits and paint them up, which are going to form the workers' cottages up at High Elven. And also, I hope, maybe, to complete the frames and have the two walls built for the engine shed. Because once those are built, I think progress thereafter will be a lot swifter. Hope you've enjoyed this edition of Elvenhome. I cannot tell you how much pleasure I'm getting from seeing the Midland Pullman run round together with the Duchess. Perhaps rather apt that they're both in a form of blue. But until I speak to you again, if you've got any comments, please do let me have comments. And if you've liked the video, well, give it a thumbs up. That is always very helpful. And if you haven't yet subscribed, well, please do subscribe, because it really would be great to have you along. So until I speak to you again in about a fortnight's time, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.